Good evening, and welcome to another amazing night over at Karmageddon. We have a guest that is a light worker, that she's here tonight so we can honor all the things that she's doing to society and the community and the whole world. But before we start, I've asked Chris if she can come and read for us the Karmageddon pledge, and if you can kindly just repeat after her. So we'll just be reminded, what is this Karmageddon is all about?
I believe that love is the most powerful healing force in the universe.
I believe that love is the most powerful healing force in the universe.
Everyone and everything on earth is interconnected.
Everyone and everything on earth is interconnected.
And that our well-being is linked to the well-being of others.
And that our well-being is linked to the well-being of others.
We are each other's teachers and healers.
We are each other's teachers and healers.
And hereby I make a personal commitment to form alliances in a Karmageddon.
And hereby I make a personal commitment to form alliances in a Karmageddon.
To connect, inspire, and empower all people.
To connect, inspire, and empower all people.
Through personal, spiritual, and social transformation.
Through personal, spiritual, and social transformation.
Into leading a conscious evolution.
To leading a conscious evolution.
Toward a more peaceful and compassionate world.
Toward a more peaceful and compassionate world.
Thank you.
Welcome to Karmageddon. And just in case this is your first time in this event, I'd like to welcome everyone that's here today. I really appreciate that you're showing up on a Saturday night. Just in case this is your first time here or you're not aware of the movement that we're having, Karmageddon is a global movement that was a vision started by many light workers, and it's been ongoing for a lot of years. All we're doing in this place, we're just raising awareness of what's really going on. If you look around you, you can hear in the media a lot of talk about the end of the world, about an Armageddon, that planet X is going to come and hit our planet, about a polar shift, about so many things that the Mayan calendar ends at one point, and we say this is going to be the end of the world. And, if you look around you, you're going to see that all the work that the light workers, all the healers, the teachers, the spiritual people in this world are doing, you're going to see that the world is really just about to end. The world as we know it is about to end. All the things that we're just watching and we don't like and we don't approve of and we want to change, all these things are about to end. There's a karmic shift in this world. There's a lot of light workers and healers and a lot of the spiritual leaders that are leading the rest of us into conscious evolution, so we can actually, instead of having Armageddon, we're going to have a Karmageddon. So welcome to Karmageddon. Tonight, like every night when we bring a member of the community leader, spiritual leader, a light worker to honor, tonight the beautiful human being I have next to me that I am honored to have her here tonight is Dr. Pearson. I met Dr. Pearson just recently through one of those events that we had here, and but I've known of her work earlier, and she's well known in the community. She has been a leader, and she really set the trail. It was really amazing when I was looking at her bio and some of the stuff that was written about her, her history. And by talking to her, she's one of the leading women in our community. As early as the 70s, she was an ordained minister. She was probably one of the very first waves of ordained ministers in the community, and she was doing a lot of transformation and work. And I looked at some of her writings, and I looked at some of the stuff that's written by her or about her and in the major newspapers, and there are some of them around us here. And I could see how empowering and inspiring she is, and she believes in women as healers and as leaders and as teachers, and she's a big advocate of women and the women movement, and she is, if she can allow me to say that, she's a goddess, and all right. I'm glad to have her here. So let's give her a hand. Let's welcome Dr. Pearson. So this is, I'm going to get a little closer, so we get a little intimate. So this is about you tonight. This is about honoring you and all your work and all the things that you do, and letting you know how blessed we are to have you in this world, in our community. So the questions I'm going to ask you, you can answer anything you want. This is your night, but the questions I'm going to ask you, what I would like to know is about you as a person, the human being. I wanted to know about you growing up. How was it like growing up for you?
Should I use this?
You can use any microphone that you like.
Can I hold it, or?
You can hold this one if you like.
Well, thank you so much, Sala. First of all, I also want to say welcome to all of you dear folks who have shown up on a Saturday night. I got a lot of last-minute notices from people who were sick or injured or going out of the country or away. And I called my friend Sylvia and said, I'm very worried about this. And she said, don't worry about that. It has nothing to do with the number of people that show up. It has to do with the spirit that is present in the room and with these dear folks who have chosen to honor you in this way. So I want to thank my dear sister Sylvia for that, and Andrew and all of you, and dear Lori for encouraging me and helping me also. And especially, I want to thank this beautiful man here who has really conceived this idea of the Karmageddons, dear Sala, and dear wonderful Grace, and dear beautiful Reverend Chris, who have helped to create this amazing space. And just to say very briefly, I first came into this space 2 weeks ago, this last Friday, for the Oneness Temple that I had just heard about. And I was overwhelmed. It was the first time in all of my years of ministry, having been ordained, that I finally felt coming home to a service where I really felt at home. I've done services, I've been part of services, I've been everywhere in the world doing services and being part of them, but coming here then was coming home. And I know it was the spirit of Grace and of Sala and of Chris and of the others who were here. And it was a space with pure love and no ego and none of the struggles that are often part of a traditional congregation. And I was deeply moved, and and there was an immediate connection between us. So I'm sure that we were together in many incarnations. And that has happened to me very, very seldom in my life. And I told Reverend Grace at that time that she was creating the service that I would have always wanted to do in my greatest, wildest imagination with the congregation that was so much a part of that. So I was born of Swedish immigrants. My grandparents on my mother's side were pioneers. They came over in the 1890s from Sweden, and they went across the country in a covered wagon. And my grandfather had a gold mine in Colorado. My mother was born in the mountains of Telluride, so I have that in my blood. My father came over from Sweden at the time of the First World War to escape the war that was beginning on the continent. And then he got drafted in that. So those were my parents that I came into this world through. My father was a very angry atheist after having been almost killed in that war. And my mother was, of course, Swedish Lutheran. So I was raised in this contradictory family. My father was also a very violent man and beat my mother and beat me, and I spent much of my early childhood getting between my father and my mother so that he wouldn't beat her. And that has been much of the myth of my life, getting between the person that is beating up somebody and the person getting beaten up. That's really been pretty much what has led me throughout my life. As a child, I had the happiest year in my life was the year I had rheumatic fever, and I was in bed for a year at age 7, and that was the happiest year of my childhood, because during that year, my mother and father were so afraid that I might die that they didn't fight. And during that year, I had mystical experiences. I'd had some before, but that year they were very intense, and I was in bed all the time. And I've heard from the psychologist and Marion Woodward and others that mystical experiences are very common in children. But then when they tell adults about them, they don't believe them, and so they block them out and pretend they weren't there. But for me, they had to do with being raised up from my bed and going through the ceiling of my room and being carried up on the wings of angels, and sometimes Jesus was there, and being taken around the world so I could look down at the earth and see the lights on the earth at night and realize that there was all this life going on this globe, and it was very real to me. So I had that sense as a very young child that this was one globe and that we were all connected. And that was my most powerful experience. And of course, when I told my mother about that, my father and father, they thought I was crazy, but I had an aunt for whom I was named, my Aunt Linnea, and she was a mystic. And she understood and she believed me. So from then on, I had a series of mystical experiences through my childhood and my adolescence and much of my life. And that has led me to the knowledge that Sala and these dear folks, you dear folks here assembled know so well, which is essentially that we are all one with the Spirit, that the divine is within us all the time, and that we are connected to everything,
Thank you. Being a minister, especially a women minister, it's a big commitment and it's a big major decision. I was wondering, when did you first start taking or making that decision that I'm going to be a minister?
My home life was very unhappy, as I noted. I was the only child, and there had been a brother born before me, but he died, and so my father was very disappointed about that, of course, so I was the only child. But my mother went to a little church, a little Swedish Lutheran church. This was on the south side of Chicago, far south side of Chicago. It was close to sort of Obama land, a little suburb called Lorana. And we went to a little church that was a bungalow. It was a little community of bungalows. And our church was a little bungalow that was at the end of the block. And the Sunday school was a little white frame church. There was a little white frame garage behind this church. The minister there was Reverend Emil Helm, and he was German, clearly, and he had a family of 13, his wife and 12 children, and they were the choir director and the choir and the Sunday school leader, and they were the church. And there were about 4 or 5 other families, so that was my family. And so I thought all churches were like that. They were families. And I wanted a family so much. So I thought, when I grow up, I'm going to be a minister, and I'm going to have a congregation that will be a family.
Thank you. I'm going to switch microphones so it makes it a little easier for us. Thank you. Probably this a little better.
Oh, yeah.
Thank you. What are some of the challenges or the oppositions that you were faced with when you decided to be a minister? Family, friends, loved ones?
Well, I started, I went to a little church college, Elmhurst College in Elmhurst, Illinois, and I told my advisor first day, I want to be a minister. And he said, girls can't do that. And I said, why not? And he said, because it's just the rule of our church. He was evangelical and reformed, which was the very conservative branch. Now, at that time, there really were women ministers in the Congregational church, which later merged with us. But either he didn't know that, or he didn't want me to know that, and I didn't know that. So it was the first time I ever was told that I couldn't do something because I was a girl, and I was devastated. And so I decided then that I would study religion, I would study literature, and go on from there.
Thank you. I know that as a professional, you're also a teacher and educator, and you teach religions, right, in a major university, right, in Florida International University. What are some of the interesting things that you had to deal with teaching religions to different people from they have different faith or different ideas, and how were you able to break through to some of those people and share with them your vision?
Thank you, Sal. Actually, I think I should go back, if you don't mind, just to the question before, just for one moment, because I realized that was just the beginning of it. So I went through and I got my degrees in literature and religion, and then I married a man who was a lawyer and a banker. I thought I was marrying somebody very different from my father, but of course I was not, and he was also a very violent man. And he decided after a couple of years of our marriage that he wanted to go back to school, and he wanted me to support us. I had just gotten my doctorate in comparative literature, so he wanted me to get a job. This was in 1968, and at that time, if you all probably don't remember, but the truth is there were very few black PhDs. And so the best paying job I could get was at an all-black college in Norfolk, Virginia, because they were hungry for PhDs to raise up their credit. And so I took this job in Norfolk, Virginia, and so I was teaching at this all-black college, one of 2 white faculty. My husband went to Old Dominion University, which was the old white university, for his course in German history. And then the only place that was integrated in town was the Unitarian Universalist congregation. And it was the center of the civil rights movement. It was the center of the emerging rights of the women's rights movement. It was the center of what we had in the welfare rights movement. It was the center of the anti-war movement. It was the center of all of that. And it was the only place in town where people of different races could meet together. So that became my social center. And then my husband fortunately decided he was going back to Germany to do some work there. And that gave me a chance to get a divorce, finally, and which was very, very fortunate, because at that time, you couldn't get a divorce for domestic violence unless someone had seen your husband hit you. And of course, you know, that never happened. You know, nobody was smart enough. So I had to get a friend to lie to say that she'd seen him hit me. She had actually seen my wounds, but anyway, so I got a divorce. And the minister of this Unitarian church included me in the service, and they were very informal services and very wonderful, you know, singing a lot of civil rights songs and gospel songs and just wonderful, wonderful times, and totally involved in the social gospel. And so he said he was a graduate of Harvard, and Harvard Divinity School was just starting to open its doors to women and people of color in 1971. And so he suggested I apply there, and I did. And they thought I was a black woman because I was teaching at this black college, and so I would fill a double quota going there. So they were very excited to get me, and I remember the dean calling up and saying, you know, we're just so glad that you're coming because, you know, we really are wanting to fill our quotas both for women and for black women. And I remember my answer was just, yes, sir. And which maybe was a little bit deceptive, but it just came out of me. And I wanted so much to go. And so when I got up there were a few mouths that dropped open a little bit. But I was one of 3 women then in that class, and it was amazing, and it was powerful. And I went there with a lot of fear that they'd find out after I was there a week that I didn't belong in Harvard. I was too dumb to be there. But what I discovered is once you get in, it's like anything else, once you get in, then they figure that you belong there, and so they're nice to you, and they welcome you. And so that was really how I got into the ministry, and that changed my life.
Thank you. Well, from your story, I can understand how you got into advocacy, just fighting for the weak and fighting for people that can fend for themselves, vulnerable. But how and when did you formally make that decision that I am actually going to stick my neck out there, I'm going to fight and take all the political heat and the social heat and all that stuff?
That really did start during that time because we had a lot of, we started the anti-war movement, so we had demonstrations and the civil rights movement and the women's movement. I founded with others the first chapter of what was then very revolutionary. Now it's nothing. The National Organization of Women. And it's a very redneck city, Norfolk. It's a Navy town. And when the news got out that I was doing that, there's one of the articles here about that, I started getting threats from women calling up and saying, we're going to come over with our husbands and show you what it really is to be a woman. And then there was actually a cross burned on my backyard, which I find hilarious. I live by the ocean, off by myself in a little house by the ocean, and then they poisoned my dog, and so that was very hard. But of course, being very young, it just made me more determined, and so we got involved in all the anti-war demonstrations so that was the start of all of that, and I'm going up to Washington, and I did get to march with Dr. King, and I did get to work with Jesse Jackson on Operation Push, People United to Save Humanity, and later I got offered a job with the National Farm Worker Ministry, and I worked with Cesar Chavez. And at the time of the Great Boycott, and when Sonia Johnson, the Mormon woman, was running for president, and before that, Shirley Chisholm, I helped in their campaigns. So I go back a long time, and we did sit in movements. I remember getting arrested in the Capitol when we were fighting for apartheid, and spending some time in jail for that. And I was arrested 2 or 3 times, but not held. And as I look back at it, those were really the happiest times of my life, feeling most alive and most empowered. But I didn't really have a chance because I was in Cambridge in the 1970s, and then from there I went out to Berkeley. I was called out to Berkeley, and so then I was in Berkeley, and so Cambridge and Berkeley and San Francisco at those years, I could never have been a Republican.
Thank you. Really amazing. You're not just one of the first women pioneers of being a minister. You're probably the first Swedish white black woman in Harvard.
Probably the last. I think I broke the mold on that one.
I've seen a lot of articles and I've read quite a few things, and I know that your interest is not just on a local level or on a national level. Your interest goes on a global level. You're advocating for women's rights in all societies, including the Middle East, including women in black, and including. So, would you like to talk more about your current vision or some of the changes that you see that need to be made in this world to make it just a better world?
I would love to. Thank you. Well, I have this little story that I tell sometimes. That what is it that the Dalai Lama and the South African priest minister, that side. Thank you, Andy. Bishop Desmond Tutu and the Dalai Lama and President Barack Obama all agree on. Anybody have a sense? All right, it's a little bit of a riddle, but what it is that they have all said that they believe that if we are to have a peaceful world, and if the world is to really change, we must bring women into the primary leadership of the world, and that, as we all know, half of the population of the world has been totally oppressed and totally omitted from human history, at least for the last 2,000 years. And especially ever since the Abrahamic religions became the dominant religions, with the concept of a deity that was exclusively male, and with the concept of women being secondary, and with the concept of the earth to be dominated by men. There has been almost a total exclusion of women from the realms of the sacred and the holy. And so when these 3 wonderful leaders have said that and continue to say that so forcibly, I've taken that as my mantra now. And I always need to say that this is nothing against the dear men in the world who are here and who are among my dearest friends, and they know that. It's just that for 2,000 years, the dominant force in politics and history and the unfolding of the human drama have been men, and they haven't done very good with it in the prison. They haven't done very good with it, and we've just had this continual fighting and this continuing warfare. And there have been a lot of studies of this, and I know you all know this, but there's something in that testosterone that just is, it goes for conflict. And even our generals now, even our generals who testify before Congress, and I'm a big watcher of C-SPAN, they say what we really need in Afghanistan, what we really need in Iraq is not more hard power. I mean, you all know this, but it's soft power. We have to learn to negotiate, to live with one another, to care about one another. And it's that soft power, which, as we know, is that power of the yin and the feminine, which is in men as much as in women. But because of our biology, because of our estrogen and our oxytocin, it's much stronger in women. And that is what will save us. The women of the world who are mothers or grandmothers or godmothers, they have not had a chance for 2,000 years to make the policies that rule the world. And I see now them rising up all over. For the first time now we have women leaders in wonderful countries, in many countries, in Africa and Asia and South America. And it's coming, it's moving. And so when you ask, the forces of Karmageddon, where we're moving, I believe that's the main thing that we're moving to. And again, it's not a put down of amazing men who understand that yin energy in this room and among many of our brothers, but when we see the violence that has continued unabashed for so long, then we know that it's time to do things another way.
You're here. Mm-hmm. Ding, ding, ding.
Okay, Karmageddon is about transformation, and transformation usually starts with making a choice, a decision, and there's action that follows that. And it doesn't have to be anything really traumatic. It's not about it could be just as simple like some of, and I give that example because I think it's simple. I don't like the way they treat chicken, for example, how they raise them. And so I only, when I go buy eggs, I only get the cage-free eggs. I spend an extra 5 cents. I'm not here to sell anything or promote anything, but for me it's like, okay, if I can't say I don't like what's happening and just go ahead and support it and pay for it and allow it to go on. So this is like some of the small or personal choices that I made. So those transformation, what are some of the choices that you're making on a personal level to make this world a little better place? Some of the things that you see that, what's the old saying, instead of cursing the dark, you light up the candle. So can you share some of the candles that you've been lighting in your personal life?
Well, yes, one definite thing has been to change to become not a meat eater because of the terrible things that we know are done to the creatures, and to try to, I am a lover of salmon. That's part of my heritage. Swedes love salmon, and salmon is still a renewable resource in some parts, but we have to worry about that. Of course, we have to worry about the oceans everywhere. We have to worry about everything right now. But to change my diet to a sustainable diet, that has been very important, and to change my own way of living to simplicity, and I have, my friend Sylvia knows, like this dress I got at Walgreens, on the rack at Walgreens. She and I both get a lot of our clothes at Walgreens for the beachwear, and most of the clothes that I have in my closet I've had for 20 or 30 years. I just have some things that I love and I wear, and so I'm not a consumer, and I hope by bearing witness to that to make it less necessary for my children. I don't have children of my own, but I have 13 godchildren, and to have an influence on their lives, to make them less dependent on consumer goods.
Thank you. And what are some of the suggestions, vision, or that you would like to see in our society? What would you suggest for people in society, in the community? Some of the things that we can do to be part of that transformation, to make this a better world for us and for our children and for years to come.
Thank you, Sala. I'm going to pull a little trick here that I saw Rabbi Mark pull when you interviewed him for the first interview, and I'm going to just ask the folks who are with us here if they might want to offer an answer to that. What are some of the things that you are doing in your lives, or that you see as possible, necessary to be done now? So first, Andy. Andy is coming forward.
I'm of the Jewish persuasion, and on the Sabbath, want me to do that? I'll go ahead.
Sure.
Mm-hmm. The Jewish persuasion. Andy is a cantor.
I'm of the Jewish persuasion, although I try to be kind of ecumenical about what I do. And on the Sabbath, one of the things I do is I turn on as few lights as possible. So in the kitchen, there's a window I don't need, and it's light out. I don't need the kitchen light. I don't use the CD player in my car on the Sabbath. And I try to, here's a good one for you. When I lock my car, I do travel on the Sabbath, I work on the Sabbath. When I lock my car, I only lock it once so the horn doesn't beep. Now, I don't know if the alarm is set if you don't click it twice or whatever, but I only do it once to avoid the sound. So I try to cognitively and spiritually be in the Sabbath. Now, back in the day, when we used to wear watches, I don't know if people wear watches, I know Scott's wearing a watch, but he's out of sync. No. But back in the day when we all wore watches, I would take my watch off on Friday afternoon, and I wouldn't put it back on until probably Sunday. Anyway, it's one more thing. I remember when I used to live in a two-story apartment building, and I guess uncharacteristic of the Sabbath, I would shop for food, because during the week I was just too crazy. But as my penance, or to be in the moment, I would not take the elevator and carry the groceries up the steps to keep the Sabbath in that sense. So the shopping was sort of restful for me, for food anyway, sustenance, and I did not use the elevator. So different ways to try to reduce that sense of, electricity and the consumption component. So that's it.
The question is, what are you doing in your life?
We were saying that they're saying, it says, instead of cursing the dark, we light up a candle. Instead of fighting what's not working, we do what's working. So what are some of the candles that you're lighting in your
One
life?
of the things that I try to do is work with my thoughts. I have come to the awareness that thoughts are, you say that the verb and the words are powerful. Thoughts are as powerful. And the fact that sometimes you're brought up thinking that your thoughts are yours and they don't affect anything. Well, now it's all the other way around, and I am absolutely conscious that every single thought can create universes. So I'm constantly working on my thoughts, and it is a battle. I could have shed a battle. And that's my main work now, my thoughts. And I think it's very inspiring, and I invite everyone to be monitoring their thoughts all the time. Try to see what we are creating.
may I just pick up on that for just a moment? And anyone else who wants to come up, please do. But I was, dear Lori reminded me that you might ask me about karma, what my concept of karma was, and so I was reviewing that in some of the notes that I'd made for my different classes through the years. And one important thing that I remembered from that was that the Buddhist concept of karma is different from the Hindu concept of karma. And part of the Buddhist concept of karma is, just as Sylvia was saying here, in line with what she was saying, that intention is very important. And so even if you have the intention to do a certain deed and the correct deed, a loving, caring, redemptive deed, and for some reason you are not able to do it, you still get the karma from that intention, and that intention still has those vibrations that it brings out into the universe. And I found that Buddhist teaching very, very, very consoling for me, because very often I have found that for whatever reason I've not been able to do the deed, the redemptive deed, the salvation deed, the salvic deed that I wanted to do. But knowing that the intention has its own effect is very comforting to me. And then in the Sikh tradition, they have, along with karma, also the idea of karpa. And what that is in the Sikh tradition is grace. And so it's not just this sort of thing of the universe or whatever spiritual forces there are keeping track of, just like the plus and the minus in our lives, or weighing, the scales of the good and the evil that we do. But there is also this concept of grace, which is something that I also have experienced very strongly in my life and feel very much at work in the world. And I would really like to also know, Sala, your feelings about this, because my sense is that in this constant struggle between, Osho and other teachers say, well, somewhere there is a field beyond good and evil. I will meet you there, right? And a part of me believes that, and a part of me has trouble with that, reconciling that in the real world, where we see the torture, and we see our country approving of torture, and we see the drone flights, and we see the terrible things that our own seemingly good people, good leaders, are perpetrating. And then we see the terrible things going on, the rape of the women in the Congo, and we see all of the terrible, terrible things going on in the world. And so it is helpful for me to have this belief, which is more than just a belief, which I've also seen manifest in my life and in the lives of those around us, that there is this redemptive power that moves through us when we are able and willing to acknowledge it and accept it and be moved by it, that can turn the most unfortunate circumstances into blessing. And I think it's very symbolic in telling that the minister of our congregation is Grace, Reverend Grace. And so that is also a part of what I feel is very important as we consider this mysterious concept of karma.
Thank you. You don't expect me to answer, right? Yes? Oh, you put me on the spot. Okay. It's perfectly right. I'm just going to open up, and whatever comes, comes. Try not to think. I have a lot of respect for the power of thought. I believe that all actions, all thoughts, all words, everything we do, everything we say is a prayer, and all prayers are answered. So thank you for reminding us that thoughts are very powerful. But I also I believe there is such thing as good and such thing as bad. I can't buy this thing that everything is just okay, just the way it is. There's no good or evil. If you're killing, I don't think this is a good thing. If you're allowing people to starve on the streets and you're dumping food in the ocean, I don't think this is a good thing. If you see abuse and you allow abuse or you commit abuse, that's not a good thing. So there is such thing as good or bad. Otherwise, there's really just meaningless everything we do. Why do we have to even try to make some change in the world or be better if there is no good or better or not good? Why would I even have to do anything different? Why do I have to try to connect with the divine and be inspired and get some help and get some vision to what's good for everybody? I know the nights when I felt like dying. I know the nights when I felt the pain, and I know when I felt the suffering, and I know nights when I felt the joy and the love of other people. So there is such thing as love, and there is such thing as lack of love. So I don't know if I want to use evil and good, but I just probably I would use there is love and there is the lack of it. When there's just fear, when it's just greed, when everything that does not come out of love, it just comes out of self-serving but this is about you tonight, it's not about me.
But I thank you so much for saying that, Sala, because that's been a major problem that I've had with a lot of quote-unquote New Age thought. And so I'll just put it out there, and take it all as you wish. I have a lot of trouble with this saying that is so popular now, that so many of my friends I hear all the time, no matter what happens, they say, well, everything happens for a reason. And I just want to say, well, duh. Of course, everything is scientifically, everything happens for a reason. There's a law of cause and effect, but that doesn't mean that it's a good reason. I mean, the women that are being raped in the Congo in this war, that's being because of the reason that that's what has always been happening there as the fruits of war, that the women get raped. But so there's a reason. But that doesn't mean that it's good. And with the karma, I met a man many, many years ago, and I was living out in San Francisco as part of the whole Esalen thing, and his name was Werner Erhard, and he was the man who began EST, and that whole sort of thing of, the EST movement, which began the forum and all of these things, and it was like, yeah, you get it, and you pay all this money, and then you get it. And so his big thing was this thing of, karma being everything. And I was at a dinner party with him, this was back in the 1970s, sitting next to this man, and that my then lover on this side of me, who's Sam King, who was very big in the whole world of Esalen. And so Werner, and it's a champagne dinner, and there's a butler there, and the butler is like one of his followers, and he has, this shaved face with sort of marks by the skin that show he's been an alcoholic, and we're drinking this $100 champagne, and so somehow the Vietnam comes up, and so Werner says in this very authoritative tone, well, and that picture had just been published of the little girl who was running, screaming from being napalmed. And so his words were, well, I don't see why everybody's so upset about that. Clearly that was karma. Clearly what's happening there is karma. That was her karma. And I was so furious. I was holding my water glass in this hand, and I had, what I said was a spasm, but I threw that glass right in his face, right in his face. And he got up to wipe it off, and I went out to the kitchen to apologize to him, and sitting in the kitchen was his wife around the corner around the table with the servants. And I said to her, why are you here? And she said, well, Werner doesn't like me to be at the table with the guests. He likes me to be here. And so here was this man that had started this huge movement, that he billions and millions and millions of dollars, influenced all of these lives. And this was his attitude. And I've discussed this with a teacher of mine, Master Shufei Zai, who is the leader of the Zen temple, Zen village in Coconut Grove. Some of my friends know her dearly. And because I've been dealing with this yin and yang and the women's groups, and my own sense was that we really have to raise up the powers of the yin in the world, because the powers of the yang are so dominant. And she has said to me, no, Amma, you really have to understand that the yin and the yang are always in balance. It's just that, it's on a higher level, they're always in balance, and so you don't have to bring it back into balance. And so that's another disagreement I've had, because I can understand that at a theoretical level, but I guess I'm just not enlightened enough, and that very well may be, because I know I'm not up there with her and others, but I look at the world and I think, no, we have too much yang in this world. It's aggression, and it's selfishness, and it's greed, and it's power, and the thing about the male and female, it's just simply men and women. The man is more powerful than the woman, and so if you have this thing that the one who is more powerful, America is the greatest nation in the world because we have more power. Other reasons too, but because we have more power to destroy the world than any other nation, and so. It seems to me in the world today we have this concept that power is the ability to destroy, and that's the prime, or the ability to control other people's lives, and the ability to buy up other people's assets and to have more than anybody. And we know, this is the power over that we know about so much. And that seems to me so prevalent in the world today and so evil. And now there are some women who have that idea, and there are some men who don't. But clearly, to me, that goes with it's the law of the jungle that might makes right, and we still have that law of the jungle in our consciousness. And the marriages that I've been in 3 marriages, and in 2 of them they were very violent, and I had no chance against the man. I had no chance against the man. And so it seems to me that we have not yet really dealt with this, and we are just beginning to deal with it, and until we do, we are going to be lost and forever going around in these same cycles. So I'm really grateful to you for saying that you believe there is evil, because in my experience, one of the things that has put me off from so much New Age spirituality, and even some of the books that are considered the Bibles on this, is this thing that if we were only transcendent enough that we would see there wasn't good and evil. And to me, that is not the place where we can do justice work in this world, justice work that needs to be done so vitally.
Thank you. That was very powerful. Just needed a minute to, and I totally agree. I believe that. I try not to share my personal beliefs, especially in gatherings like that. I just want to be as neutral as possible. But sometimes just being neutral will equal being a contributor. If I see evil or something harm done to people and I don't say anything about it, I don't try not to do anything about it. And it doesn't, I'm not trying to get political or do anything. I'm just saying just the little things, like how we treat each other, how we treat animals, how we treat the homeless, how we treat the vulnerable population, people with mental illness or other illnesses, how we treat sick and suffering people in this world, children, women, the elderly. Even I've seen guys being abused. You know, so it's not just it's not just a gender issue. It's more of treating. Everyone has the right to be treated with respect, and everyone has the right to be equal. Respect the limitations in each other and honor it, and see what's good in everyone. I believe that we always find what we look for, and if we try to find what's wrong with anyone, we can find something wrong. If I try to find something wrong with Mother Teresa, I can always go pick on her feet, say, can't she get a pedicure, for example? So, if I try to find something wrong with a rainbow, I can. If I want to find something good in anyone, I was always floored and amazed and in awe. I would talk to people that you would think that society would think that they have nothing to offer. It'd be like somebody homeless on the street. And I was fortunate enough to sit down and have a conversation and all the knowledge and the wisdom and what they have to offer. One of my personal commitments, things that I'm working on as a part of Karmageddon, is I want to get the elderly involved in this movement, because I feel that there's a lot of wisdom that's somehow being neglected or overlooked or wasted by our society. They think that once you reach a certain age, you don't have much to offer. It probably has something to do with, like you said, power. You're not strong. You're not, and they always look at the old as old, and the new is like we are the now generation. We don't want anything from the old and elderly or so. But there are people that I know. That they have a lot to offer and a lot to give, and they have a lot of wisdom, and just the way I look at all my personal life, the older I get, the more chance I have to learn things about life, the more knowledge that I have, the more ideas I'm willing to let go of, and it's like, would that all go to waste? We are, I guess we have a responsibility as society, as human, you know, just to learn from each other, to all the things that have been learned over thousands of years and centuries and generations that we pass on to each other. We have a responsibility of learning from the people before us and take that knowledge and give it to people after us. We don't have to reinvent the wheel every day. And it seems like a lot of times we're doing that, especially when it comes to spirituality, especially when it comes to treating each other, especially when it comes to relationships. I look and I see that some of the things that we do today are the same things that were done thousands of years ago. I look at some translated papyrus and I see like some stories, families and lovers and people fighting and then we still can't figure it out till today. How would the world be like if we pass on this knowledge to each other, all the wisdom, if we're willing to accept it and take it and carry it and refine it and give it to other people and share it, especially about humanity? When are we going to learn that wars don't work? I mean, it is okay to defend yourself. You have the right to defend yourself, you know, but to actually go and exploit somebody else, it's just like it doesn't. I can't remember what politician said. You can't have peace by killing your neighbor's children. I think was it Jimmy Carter? I'm not sure. But like when I see how people for the price of one bomb, you can actually build I don't know how many schools or hospitals. You know, it's all the money that is wasted on things that we can actually help each other. And we have enough resource in this world for everybody.
And who gets rich on all that? Who gets rich on all the instruments of war?
But there's a lot of misconception about being rich or being wealthy and being powerful and actually succeeding in life. Because I look around and I see a lot of people that have a lot of money. Doesn't matter if they could be presidents. They're always worried. What kind of a success is that? You're not even sure if you're going to still have your job 4 years from now. You know? What kind of a success is that? You're always worried about being re-elected. If you're head of a big corporation and you're worried about losing everything. You have all this money in the world and you still don't have enough. And you want to have more greed. You want to, So what kind of a success is that? I believe what you said about simplicity.
Well, first of all, it's so refreshing to hear a frank feminist stance. And I am wondering what kind of reaction you usually get in 2012 with a strong feminist stance. And what are you hearing right now?
The thing is, I'm now 73 years old. And my friends, many of my friends are dead, many of my friends are dying all the time. I fortunately am in good health, but I'm very aware now. I don't have that much time left. I mean, even if I have 20 years left, that's not much time for me. I have a lot that I want to do. And I'm also, just tonight meant so much, is meaning so much to me, because I just decided when I came here tonight, or really when I was talking, that from now on, I'm going to be fearless. I'm just fearless. And whatever, thank you. And, and whatever people want to say about me, whatever they want to do, the little bit I know, the little bit I say, I'm starting.
First of all, I want to honor you for for being a pioneer, and also to remind us that there's more than one religion and one faith practice, so that the Bible, for the Hindu, talks about a male and a female God. And so that, just to remind people, as you've been mentioning, that there's the God of the Abrahamic traditions, which you've mentioned, but there are many, many other scriptures, and that the Abrahamic scriptures are not the only scriptures that are followed. But I also wanted to just go back and again honor you for a lot of the things that you've done in your lifetime, and the pioneer that you are, and the courageous being that you are in this embodiment, definitely a priestess and a sage, and a teacher, and a sadhu, and a minister, and a guru. And just to really put that out there, to say how much I honor hearing what you're saying, and all that you've done, and your social justice, your action. And to go back to what you were talking about earlier about karma, because I think this is something that we struggle with, or I struggle with, is this notion of self-effort plus divine grace. And we talked earlier about the shift, and I wanted to just say that for me, the shift is about the shift that happens within me. So that when I start to become selfless and more other-centered, if we could all do that and be other-centered and not self-centered, that's where I think the bigger shift is going to take place. But that the shift begins right with us. Our shift of consciousness and our shift of awareness. Sometimes the truth is very, very uncomfortable, because it becomes this shift in our awareness, and the shift in what is reality and what we've known and what we were taught, and lies that we were told and lies that we fed into. So we start to get nauseous with that. And it's growing pains. So that's a good thing. It's a seed. I think that you planted a seed tonight, and I really appreciate that, and I appreciate that courage. And again, I wanted to just honor you.